we're talking about in acceptance and commitment therapy is building psychological flexibility, our ability to show up to the present moment with all of our thoughts and feelings and choose to do what is in line with our values, who we want to be, what we want to stand for, what deeply matters in the world. Um, we are not seeking to fix pain, difficult thoughts, feelings. Pain is a universal part of being human. What we do want to do is reduce resistance, and resistance is experiential avoidance. And experiential avoidance is anything that you're doing or not doing to control the way you feel on the inside. This is only problematic if it is coming at a cost, and specifically if it's coming at a cost to your values. So that's like sort of the overarching explanation of ACT in a nutshell. Now let's talk about the imposter experience specifically. So you may be wondering why I have a picture of a golfer on this slide. That seems terribly random, just like the skunk and the bicycle probably seemed random at first, but of course I have a story. So when I got my master's degree before I got my doctoral degree, and I had a mentor say to me, you're going to go off to do your doctorate and you're going to think everyone here knows more than me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. They're all smarter. And at any minute, they're all going to figure out that I am incompetent and I don't know what I'm doing. And I just went like chin to the floor and was like, have you been reading my mind? Like, how did you know? I already feel that way. I'm not even there yet. And I already feel that way. And he never gave it a name. He never said this is the imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome or imposter experience. But he knew, because this is such a common universal experience. And for me, the reason I really, really felt like this had to be true is I applied to a program that was competitive. I never in a billion years thought that I would get in. And I was living in San Diego at the time, and Boston is home. It's where I grew up, and I was applying to go to Boston University. And I didn't tell my family because I didn't want any pressure to move back home if I got in. Of course, I didn't think I would get in, so it was moot, but regardless, I didn't tell them until this secret like really ate away at me, and I was feeling very guilty for not sharing. So I finally told my dad, oh, I got to tell you something. I didn't want you to pressure me, but here's this thing that happened, and someone told me I should apply to BU, and so I did. And I applied to work with this guy, Dave Barlow. And my dad goes, Dave Barlow, the psychologist? And I was like, yeah, my dad's a business guy. He doesn't know anything about mental health. I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, I've played golf with him. And so he told Dave, oh, my kid's applying to your program. And I did apply, and fast forward, I was accepted. And that was over 20 years ago. And to this day, I still feel anxious sharing that story because I'm quite certain that you're all sitting there going, well, yeah, obviously your dad got you into that program, duh. And rationally, like I think I sort of know that can't possibly be true because it's not giving David Barlow much credit, right? He only let 12 people in, and that'd be kind of crazy if he just let his golfing buddy's kid in if I was going to fail, right? If I was going to make him or the program look bad. But emotionally, there is this deep insecurity that I didn't deserve to be accepted to that program, that I was far too mediocre and that I really didn't belong to be there. I didn't deserve to be there. And so I'm wondering how many of you have had some experience like that, where you feel like you just got something because of luck, or because someone was just being nice, or affirmative action, or because you were a legacy, something of that nature. And, I think because my master's mentor had sort of predicted I would have this experience, I was like, all right, maybe it makes sense. I'm new at this. I'm a student, early career, but surely as I rack up accomplishments and I do all the things, eventually I won't feel this way anymore. Like when my CV gets thick enough, then I won't feel this way anymore. And guess what? I wrote a whole book about this topic, and I still feel this way all the time. And I'm wondering how many of you this resonates with. And you can share if you want in the chat, but you certainly don't have to. But I do see one person at least raising their hand. Um, I have a feeling, yes, Lillian, even with a PhD, same, right? It's just no matter how much you rack up accomplishments, this doesn't seem to go anywhere. And so the name for this, well, when this was first identified in 1978 by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, who were two psychologists, they called this the imposter phenomenon. And it's this feeling of phoniness or inadequacy that is extremely persistent, even when there is objective evidence of accomplishments, achievements, deservedness of a job or a position or an award or a degree or whatever the case may be. Now, interestingly, when Clance and Imes first identified this, and remember, this was the late 70s, they believed that it only occurred in high achieving women. And lo and behold, somehow culturally, it got rebranded as a syndrome. And in the late 70s and early 80s, I don't think that that is a coincidence. Oh, the ladies are feeling insecure, must be a syndrome. Oops, what's happening? Hold on, sorry. Let me back us up here. I don't know what just went crazy. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. Got it. Woo. But what is a syndrome? It's a pathology. It is a disease. It is a disorder. But research has shown that this imposter experience affects up to 70% of us. So the great majority of us. So just like that skunk, how is it possible that if the great majority of us, and I think, most of you in that chat were like, yeah, me. I mean, there's a selection bias because you probably wouldn't be here if this weren't something you or your client struggled with. But if this affects so many of us, it simply cannot be the case that it is a syndrome. It is just a normal part of being human. That said, it can get in our way, which is why we're all here today talking about what to do about that. Like I said, millions of hits on Google, not a lot of good science. And I hope that there will be more science going forward. But there are hypotheses out there that this may be more common among people who have had experiences of marginalization. So some studies show it's more common in women than men, but other studies show there's no difference. My guess is that if instead of just simply dividing by gender, we divided by people who have been marginalized and people who have not, that is really where we would see that difference. And so, if somebody is male, straight, cis, able-bodied, of a higher SES, educated, these are things that are likely to be more protective against this imposter experience. But that doesn't mean that that person hasn't experienced ageism, right? Let's say they work in technology with a bunch of young people. Let's say they work in athletics with a bunch of young people. Stay-at-home dads, for example, may have this experience because they're in the minority when it comes to who's doing most of the caretaking. So really, this can affect absolutely anyone. Who are the 30%? Possibly people who haven't been marginalized, also people who are guilty of, do you remember learning about in school the Dunning-Kruger cognitive bias? It's that cognitive bias where you fail to see, or you overestimate your knowledge, skill, ability in some area and fail to see that you're not actually competent in those areas. Okay, so what I want to suggest is that we turn that initial rebranding around into a new cultural rebranding. We drop the syndrome because it's not a syndrome, and we refer to it in these other ways. And when I do call it imposter syndrome, like on social media, because that's the word people know, that's why I always put it in quotes, because it's clearly not a syndrome. The imposter experience, imposter phenomenon, which is the original, imposter thoughts and feelings, or like on the cover of my book, when SL read it in the beginning, imposterism. Okay, so you might recognize this experience in yourself or your clients if you've been making plans in your head or even writing it down on paper and there's a path, but you can't get going to take that first step. Or you keep telling yourself you're going to do it eventually, but you need something first. You need to feel just a little more certain, just a little more confident and self-assured. Or it's not about certainty and confidence. It's like, I really just need more knowledge and more skill and more expertise. And so maybe you're avoiding doing those things, waiting until you feel ready and like you have enough or are enough. Or the opposite, maybe you're on that hamster wheel of like achieving and achieving and achieving. Because if I just get one more award or promotion or accolade, then I'll finally feel legitimate. And so those are all signs that you or your client may be struggling with this imposter experience. And interestingly, and maybe the bad news is that this imposter experience can lead to two different forms of experiential avoidance, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. One is avoiding challenges. And think about if you do that, I'm not going to go for the promotion because I'm not sure I meet every single qualification. I'm not going to like put my name in the ring to be on that board or win that award. And what happens when you avoid that challenge? You get relief, just like we talked about before. But what's the cost? Potentially missed opportunities. But the opposite can always also be true. That hamster wheel thing, like I'm going to overachieve and keep going and doing more and doing more and doing more. And I think anecdotally, I don't have research to support this, but anecdotally, this is what I tend to see with mental health professionals and highly educated people is I'm just going to do more and do more. We're overachievers, we're perfectionists. And we think if we just keep doing this, then eventually we'll outrun these imposter feelings, these feelings of inadequacy. And of course, the cost there is burnout, especially in the type of work that we do.